Welcome, everyone, to the RPG Goblin, a TTRPG exploration podcast. Today, we are going to be doing something a little bit different, as this is going to be a Q&A episode, which I am actually recording live in my Discord. This is really exciting because when you are listening to this episode, it is going to be the first anniversary of the RPG Goblin, which means that I've been running this show and posting episodes for a year now, which is absolutely insane. I still can't quite wrap my head around it, but thank you so much for everyone who's been listening along and following along with this whole project, because I've been having a blast and I can't wait to do it for even longer. And for this, we are doing a Q&A, and I have a bunch of questions and stuff that people have submitted before we started, plus people are going to be hanging out in the chat here as we're recording this, asking questions along as we record, and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, I'm very excited about this, and I guess I kind of want to reflect a bit, because I don't think I've actually said it. I mean, I may have said it in a recent episode, but I don't think I've actually formally said kind of how the RPG Goblin has started. So I think that's kind of a good starting off point here before we dive into all of these questions. And so, if you don't know, the RPG Goblin actually started it was January of 2023. I actually got the idea to do it I think in the summer of 2022, when I was actually coming home from visiting family up in Ohio. And I was super into I was running a D&D campaign at the time, and I was starting to actually get into more of the TTRPG space and all the different books and games that were out there. And so I wouldn't stop talking about them, and I was just really, really obsessed. And so when we were coming back from this trip, I just kept oh my God, I just thought about this idea for my campaign, or I just found this really cool book. Specifically at the time, it was Land of Eam, which I love that game so much. And I wouldn't stop talking about that. And my mom is insanely supportive, but she told me during that trip that she loves me, but I need to start a podcast or something, because she can't keep listening to me talking about TTRPGs so much. And that's actually why I started the RPG Goblin, because I'm like, wait, that's actually a really good idea. Why don't I start a podcast where I can, actually talk about these games and not annoy my parents or I guess my entire family. Luckily, my siblings are into TTRPGs too, and they actually are the ones who play in my home games. So shout out to you guys, because you guys are awesome and all of that. But I always like telling that story, because I think a lot of people can relate to their family not caring about the games that they're playing, which is understandable, but at the same time, I feel like it's so nice to have an outlet to just talk about this hobby that you're obsessed with. And for me, the RPG Goblin was exactly that. At first, it was just I want to talk to people about TTRPGs. I didn't really have a full direction, and so there's actually um there is a recording, or maybe some even episodes, I think several episodes potentially, that it could be split up into, that have never been released, of kind of the first draft of recording for the RPG Goblin, with one of my friends, Jay, who runs Magpie Dice. Jay's absolutely fantastic. I love them. They were on for the Quiet Year and Wander Home episodes, which was great. And so we kind of test recorded some stuff to see if this worked. And then after that, I decided to bring on Emily to talk about Monster of the Week, because that was the big game in my head that I'm just obsessed with. I was gearing up to start a campaign for around that time. And so we recorded that, and I found that I really, really loved talking to people about these games, and actually learning about them along the way too, because yeah, I want to talk, but I feel like I'm a sponge, and I really like to just absorb all the information. A lot of the times I will listen to conversations instead of actually contributing to them, because I just want to suck in all of the knowledge. And so that's why I really like the format of bringing people on to talk about games they really liked, and or topics or things like that, and talk about their experiences and why they love these games and all of that, because it just feeds that need for me to just consume all this information. Plus, I get to have fun conversations about games. So I think that's really awesome. I mean, that's kind of the story of why this show got started, and I think it's pretty cool in my opinion, and it's been a really fun project. And it's funny because it took me a few months to even release the first episode of the RPG Goblin too, because I was so nervous about like actually releasing it to the public and like what people were going to think, and even if it was going to be something that worked. So I think I had like that Monster of the Week episode recorded sometime in October, and it didn't actually release until January. But yeah, no, I that's kind of the, I guess, journey of starting the RPG Goblin, which I'm still just, again, amazed that we've come this far already. But I think we should probably actually maybe get to the point of this whole thing, which is a Q&A. First question, though, is from Jeff from Big Campaign Pod, which Jeff is a great guy. I've had him on for Pathfinder First Edition episode, which was really, really fun. And he asked, what's the one game you haven't gotten to talk about that you want to? It's simple, but at the same time, it's incredibly hard to just name one game, because I could probably name at least there's three that go off at the top of my head immediately, and then I could probably name a million more because I like way too many of these games. But here, I'll give top three, and then I'll narrow it down to one and why. So I think that kind of the top three games that I've been really dying to talk about on the show and find somebody to talk about it with on the show is Vaesen, Apocalypse Keys, and Land of Eam. The only one I'll give Land of Eam is that it's not officially out yet. It's still like releasing and printing its books from the crowdfunding campaign. So that's at least understandable of why I haven't found anyone quite yet. But the other two have actually been out for a while, and I've been dying to cover those games. I'll give a little bit of an overview of what these games are and why I like them. First of all, Vaesen is a game from Free League. It's all about like Scandinavian or Nordic horror as you're hunting these Vaesen, which are these like folklore kind of monsters. It's like a beautiful game. It's really gritty and really dangerous too. It's very easy to die. I just love the setting of it, and it's also one of my favorite books to flip through and read because the art is absolutely perfect. I love the way that the system works and all of that. Then we have Apocalypse Keys, which is a game that I think went on Kickstarter last year, and that's all about playing as these Omen class, like really powerful monsters who are hired by this company called Division to basically prevent the apocalypse from happening. Except the fact that as these monsters, if you can't control your powers, you can actually become a harbinger of the apocalypse and accelerate it and start it, which I just find really, really interesting. It's actually like kind of based off of Powered by the Apocalypse and Brindlewood Bay. And it's all about like these mysteries of trying to figure out who these harbingers and where these doors are that will actually, lead up to the apocalypse. And it's just a beautifully like emotionally tragic game. I love it. And then Land of Eam, which like I already mentioned before, it's not officially out yet, but it's a game that is basically Lord of the Rings meets the Muppets, which is my absolute favorite thing in existence. I love that concept, and it probably doesn't help the fact that my family actually calls me a Muppet. So I choose to believe that helps my connection with the game. Basically, that game is like a super whimsical fantasy going on quests in this like industrial dungeoneering era of this world, and it's so delightfully goofy and I mean whimsical. And so those are the top three I would say that I really want to cover on the show, and I haven't yet. Though I may actually be doing an episode of Vaesen soon, so a little bit of a sneak peek there, which I'm really excited about. So I think I'll cut that one from like the top one, and I may say Apocalypse Keys maybe the top game, like the one game that I've been dying to talk about on the show and haven't. Like it's been out for a while. I've read through it. I'm in love with the concept and the art and all of these details surrounding it. And I feel like I just haven't found people who are playing it yet. That's kind of been the big reason why I haven't talked about it, is I haven't found anyone who's played the game. And so I'm just dying to see like maybe an actual play, or someone who has done something with it, because I just love that game so much that I want it to be on the show so bad. So if anyone's listening and you've played Apocalypse Keys, let me know, because I would love to talk about it on the show. Also, Land of Eam is in that boat too. Basin, I think I have covered already. But yeah, Apocalypse Keys, I think, is the one game that I've been really wanting to have on the show and haven't been able to cover yet. So thank you, Jeff, for that question that I may have overcomplicated a little bit, because I can't just pick one TTRPG. There's too many that I like, and I could still even think about more that I've been dying to cover. But we're going to move on from that, because I could probably do a whole thing about all of the games that I want to cover on this show, which that could be fun. Of like, here's a bunch of games that I want to cover on the show I haven't, and maybe some rundowns of them. But next we have Crystal, who is Ginger Gal. She actually is the writer of A Divine Calling, which is a game that I really love as well, and that I can't wait to actually get. But she asks, what is the one game genre that I feel is underserved? And for me, I actually think that is horror. Specifically, like with TTRPGs, horror TTRPGs, I think is really underserved. And I think a big reason for that is that they can be really tricky to pull off. There's some big ones out there like Dread and 10 Candles and Call of Cthulhu that I think are kind of the titans of like horror TTRPGs. And those are all really good games. 10 Candles is still one of the ones that I want to try really, really badly. I need to get like that dark cabin in the middle of the woods. But I think the horror genre for TTRPGs is pretty underserved, especially ones that don't feel super clunky to use. Because I was actually recently, I have a friend's birthday that just came up, and something I like doing for my group is running like these birthday one shots. So I've done quite a few games so far, and for this friend, they are super into horror, and so I was trying to find like a good horror game to run for them, and unfortunately we are online, so stuff like 10 Candles and Dread had to be cut immediately, since those have really important physical elements to them. So instead I went with, okay, here's some other suggestions, like The Zone by, oh god, what's his name? Like, one of the things that I'm horrible at and I want to get better at is actually remembering names of designers and stuff. I've always been really bad with names, especially when I was in school. I actually had a friend where on the first day I was like, hey, I need you to probably say your name like several different times for it to actually stick in my head. Oh yeah, Raphael DeMalco. But I was going through like all of the horror RPGs that I have on my like mega Google Drive of TTRPGs, and I felt like I couldn't really find anything that really fit, especially an online horror game that didn't have to rely on things like a Jenga tower or candles. And so I think horror RPGs are really underserved for me. Ones that are simple to use and ones that don't require a physical element, because that kind of eliminates the possibility of online play unless you're really creative to get around it. I know 10 Candles has a tabletop simulator like mod, or there's not a tabletop. There's a mod on Tabletop Simulator that someone made where you can play 10 Candles, which is a way that I would like to try and play it if I was able to get a group together online, since that at least you can try and simulate some of those real life environments. But yeah, I think horror TTRPGs, I'd like to see more of them. And so, I mean, this is also an invitation if anyone would like to send me horror TTRPGs, cool games that you think work really well in the horror genre. Because right now I know like 10 Candles, Dread, Call of Cthulhu. I think like there's a game called Bluebeard's Bride or something. I think that's horror. Brindlewood Bay is also technically horror-ish as well. I know they have elements of eldritch horror in them, but also you play as a bunch of cute old ladies like solving mysteries, which I just think is really cute. So it's hard to be like spooky game when it's really cute. But maybe there's more within the indie space that I just need to check out. So I actually probably know more solo horror games, which I love those. And I'll cover some of those later since I know there's a question about solo TTRPGs here. But yeah, I think horror, and maybe, I don't know. I think there's a lot of sci-fi and fantasy and modern out there, so I think that one's the big one for me. From Stinkmeister, which I just have to say, I love that name so much. It always makes me crack up when I see it in the Discord. Stinkmeister asks, what the most unexpected twist or turn that you or your players have introduced to a TTRPG world, catching you completely off guard? Now, this one's actually kind of gotten me stuck as I've like tried to think about some examples, and it may just because I haven't been playing a lot of consistent games for a while. So I feel like my memory's not great on this for some of the games that have had like big twists or turns. Uh, but I think probably the one that comes immediately to mind is in my D&D, in my first D&D campaign that I was running with my friends. One of the characters was actually connected with this like demon lady, and she kind of was provoking and kind of a jerk. But she would show up every once in a while, and she was kind of becoming the main antagonist for the game. Sadly, uh, we ended up killing the game before we were actually able to really get any payoff from this villain. But what I ended up doing was a game recap, sort of, or like kind of where my vision for the game was going. And in that, I actually revealed that during this whole time, they've been trying to figure out who this lady is. And all they knew is that her name was Abaddon and that she was a demon, or yeah, that she was a demon specifically. And so that was the only information that they could find, and they couldn't, like, in game research, they couldn't find anything. And I reveal at the end, as I'm doing kind of this epilogue thing, that surprise, surprise, she's actually been a god the entire time. That surprised a lot of my players of like, are you serious? And kind of the whole reason why she was a god, I had it planned since the beginning, is that I'm super into I really love pantheons that involve multiple different gods. And so when I designed my pantheon for my game, I really wanted a bunch of different gods. And for me, I didn't want gods that were just good. So specifically, Abaddon was a goddess of like pain and tyranny and like all of these different things. And she got off on basically causing people pain, and that's why she was connected with this character, because kind of the whole story that this character was going through caused this person a lot of pain, and so she kept pushing that character further and further and further to mess with her, like she was basically playing a game. And so that was like a huge twist at like the when we were wrapping up this game, is that she was an actual god. And so I thought that was really, really cool. And in that same, I mean, that especially, was a huge world thing. And I wish I had an answer specifically for like a player that had like a huge twist or turn within the world. But I don't think I've had like a really big moment yet where my players have introduced something insane to the world. Since we all started actually playing D&D and in public games specifically, and still being really collaborative in the world is still new to our group, especially since like we've only played our first non D&D game this year, and I always try to remind them that they can add elements to the world and bring in their own things. But I do know one that got me is in that this one isn't world specific, this is more character specific. Our paladin within that D&D game that I was running actually changed their oath like midway through the game. And that surprised me a lot because this wasn't something we were really planning yet. And so we sit down to play and we're starting to go through these motions, and the character that's been kind of tormented by this, now we know god, but at the time devil, like revealed all this information about, you know, like what Abaddon's been doing and all of this. And went over this whole thing of how this character kind of went through a breakdown after Abaddon kind of pushed her a little too far. And all of this was like talked through. We made sure this was fine. um and then later on, that like later in that day, that character ended up locking themselves in the bathroom, cutting off all their hair, because like on top of that, they had a lot of personal information come up through Abaddon, and her kind of being on the opposite side of their god, and or at least, knowing her as a devil so far, obviously she was on the opposite side of their god, but then she actually was like the polar opposite of their god. And they ended up like doing this whole transformation, like cutting off their hair and like physical transformation, and changed their oath from a paladin of glory to a paladin of vengeance, to get back at this demon lady for hurting their friend and basically being against their god. And it was like this really big thing that I thought was so freaking cool. That was really awesome. But that, like, technically that wasn't like a huge world like twist or anything, but that was just a really cool moment and something I loved from my players, just bringing in their own agency of like, this is what I'm gonna do. And I think that's super awesome. And I hope for more of my players to bring in like big world twists. But yeah, let's probably move on. I feel like this may go for a little longer than I'm intending, because I am really bad at uh, trying to keep things short when talking. I just talk a lot. So yeah. All right, let's continue. So from Technomancer Kyle, which Kyle, you left so many questions, and I'm so excited to get to all of them. First question you have is, how has running this podcast changed you or your perspective? And I think this is a great question, because for me, running this podcast has changed me a lot. Specifically, it's definitely changed my social life. Um, Before I started the podcast, I recently moved to Florida, and I don't love Florida, and it's not fun. But I recently moved to Florida, and by doing that, I left a lot of my friends behind in Ohio, and I'm really bad at like kind of keeping in contact over text with them. And so I was getting pretty lonely around that time, and I reconnected with some of my older friends, and we got some groups together. I started to play like that D&D game, and now we're playing Monster of the Week and such. But other than like a select, I don't know, like two people, I didn't really have other people in my life to be talking about with stuff. And so a big way that this podcast has changed me is like, it's provided a huge opportunity to meet people and actually like make friends in this space that I really, really love. Like, I get to talk to people about TTRPGs. What could be better than that? Like, seriously, it is like my favorite thing. And it's changed me because I've actually have friends now, and I've learned a lot as well. The way that I started to, you know, running my first ever D&D game, which was about 2 years ago, to now, I have learned so many different things about running games, about game theory, about all of these concepts that I never really considered even when I first started to get into playing TTRPGs, especially when I first started to play D&D. I had no idea anything that was going on then. But like, I have changed so much just with my GMing. Because like, especially with like collaborative storytelling, learning more about that and wanting to implement that more into my games. Different techniques. I know that Monster of the Week episode that I did gave me a lot of ideas, just because I was able to actually talk to someone about running a game and hear how they did it. And so that gave me ideas. Even if I didn't implement every single thing, it at least got my brain going on stuff. And I also think it's really helped me as a person too, because I used to be a dice maker before this, and I loved doing that, but I was pretty to myself on stuff. And that was just because I was kind of uncomfortable putting myself fully out there. And with, the RPG Goblin, the whole thing is like, you know, I'm promoting this podcast. I'm the host of it. I'm the main person that's always going to be on every single episode. And it's kind of forced me out of my comfort zone to really put myself out there, and more confidently too. So it's changed me in a lot of different ways. And it's changed my perspective on games so much, because I definitely was someone who thought like kind of the GM controlled everything, especially like early days of me playing D&D 2. And I mean, that has been mythically changed as I've learned more by running this show. So it's changed a lot about the way I perceive TTRPGs, and even my own personal life too. So I'm just so thankful for this show. It's been life changing. I mean, clearly. But second question that Kyle has: is there any lessons you want to share to anyone wanting to get into making podcasts? And this is going to be very specific to like my journey. I recorded several different episodes before I released the RPG Goblin. It was months. It took me months to actually release them, and it took me until I told myself to not be a coward to do it. So my biggest advice is just start. If you want to have a podcast and you want to start a podcast, the best way to do it is to ignore all of the thoughts in your head that is like, what if this fails or anything like that. Just start doing it. And if you have fun doing it, then you're going to want to continue, and don't worry about what other people are thinking. Just you should be doing something that you enjoy, and just start doing it, because it's so easy, at least for me specifically, it's so easy to put it off and be like, yeah, this show may not really be any good. People may have different opinions and may disagree with it. Don't care about any of that. Well, I mean, I like, and it's hard to say that, because like even now I still care about what people think about the show, but those thoughts are always going to be in your head, and it's easier to just try and push past them and just start it. Just start the thing, and that's my best advice. Just start the thing is my lesson. But also, learn a little bit about microphones and stuff like that, because I recently like listened back to the first episode of the RPG Goblin, aka the Monster of the Week one, and I realized how bad my mic quality was. And even though I think that's still a fine episode, it hurts a little bit, because it's like my mic quality has definitely improved, and I think it makes for a much better listening experience. So do look into microphones and getting one that doesn't sound terrible for your first episode. But other than that, I think for me, like, all of this has been I've been learning it along the way. And so it's hard to give like a bunch of lessons on like, here's how you do it. But yeah, I think the biggest one is just start it. I think that's the best advice and lesson that I can give. What is my favorite type of character to play? This is also from Kyle. So I personally am a forever GM in my group. I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do. So I don't really get to play a lot of characters. I mean, I play a lot of NPCs, but I haven't played too many like actual player characters, especially recently. But one of my favorite like archetypes of like characters to play for NPCs is like the soft boy. Specifically, in my D&D campaign, we had an NPC named Kane, and he ended up becoming the boyfriend of one of the characters, and he was just a really caring and soft person. And the character who was his girlfriend was actually the one getting kind of tormented by this devil, or by this demon lady. And he was like with her during the whole thing. And even in my Monster of the Week campaign now, we have a character named Raphael, and he's actually probably the party's favorite NPC, as he's just like this really caring guy, but he's like super like upbeat and into it. And he's like, yeah, let's go out for drinks, Pidge. Like, we're going to be best friends. And like, I just really love playing kind of that. I guess it's that supportive character, and that's like just super like involved with the party too. I love playing those characters. I also really like playing bad guys in TTRPGs, especially ones that may be a little sadistic, just because that's an interesting archetype that I do enjoy in some media with villains and stuff. That was definitely what that demon lady was. She was kind of sadistic. She sucked. But when it comes to like player characters and the types of characters that I like playing long term, that one's really difficult because I just haven't had the time to really play a character long term. I think the last time I played a character for more than like 3 sessions was m- oh, I mean, technically, I actually am playing a D&D game now still. Sorry, we're on hiatus, and I kind of forgot about that. But that game kind of started a while ago, and the types of characters that I would play now are definitely very different than then. Um, I don't know. I like playing characters that are associated with nature a lot. So ones that are very much into the earth and animals and things like that are characters that I like to play. I don't know. I'll have to explore that more because I haven't thought too much about characters that I like to play. This is going to be the last one of Kyle's for a moment here, which is there a type of character you want to try and play at some point in the future? Yes. Yes, there is. His name is Diddley Darndus. He is an insane scientist man that is not good at science at all. He's very bad at it. He's not very smart, but he believes in himself, and so he will go on rants and type and things like that. And I so desire to play this character. I have for like I think about a year now because my younger sibling was thinking about running a game, and Diddley Darndus was the was the character that I made for it. And so we've been talking about this character for like ages. That game never happened. And I always try and think of an excuse to play him because I love his name. I love the idea of him just being this really stupid scientist. In the original story that we were thinking about, he was going to be like really into researching dragons. But he was going to basically know nothing about dragons and have an assistant that basically does all of the work, but he kind of passes it off as his own. And I realized like later on that he would be like probably a really good Blades in the Dark character. Because he's kind of a like he's kind of a weird guy. I don't know. I just feel like he would work really well in a Blades game. Or like Land of Eam, I thought recently would be really goofy if I just leaned into the goofy side of that character too. But yeah, Diddley Darndus. That's the character I've been really dying to play, and I just have very vague strokes of like how I want to play him, which is mostly a stupid scientist. Um, One day, Diddley, we will enter a campaign and it will be beautiful. Uh, but yeah, next question. Fofi or Fofi. I'm not sure which way to say it, but Fofi asks, what made you want to branch out and try other TTRPG systems than what everyone already knows? Uh, so this specifically for me, I'm like I always try and remember kind of the exact timeline. It was around Christmas, I think, of last year, or I guess not. Yeah, last year. I think it was Christmas of 2022. I asked for things that related to TTRPGs. At the time, I was running my D&D game and super into that, and I was buying a lot of the D&D books because I just was super into it. But my brother didn't want to get me like any more D&D books or any like kind of D&D accessory type thing. So instead he actually got me starter sets for Call of Cthulhu and Animal Adventures, which actually is a simplified D&D. Um, and he got me those, which made me realize that there are actually other games than D&D, and that made me revisit Monster of the Week, specifically I listened to the Adventure Zone's campaign of Amnesty, which is when they played Monster of the Week. And at the time when I listened to it, which was years ago, I didn't realize that was a different game. And so when I saw that, Call of Cthulhu was a completely different game than anything else, I looked back into Monster of the Week and I ended up buying that book. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to read it. I'm just going to check it out, see what's actually inside. I get it, I read it, and I fall in love. I am still in love with the Monster of the Week game and the book in general. It's one of my favorites, which sounds like such a silly thing to say. Like, I have a favorite TTRPG book to read, but that would be Monster of the Week in Basin. But Monster of the Week is one of my favorites, and that's what made me start playing other TTRPG systems than I know, or I did know at the time, which was just D&D 5e. And so, I mean, it's been basically a slippery slope since Monster of the Week. I got into that, I fell in love, and then I started to look into other systems. And then I have filled up the bookshelf behind me very quickly. And so far, I've played I think it's been 11 games this year outside of D&D. And this is like the first year I played a non-D&D TTRPG. So I'm pretty happy with that. But it was just the concept that there were other games is what really helped me branch out. So I'm always super thankful for that. It's cool seeing the videos of the podcast on socials. Ever thought of doing a full video episode? Actually, yes. So the videos of the podcast on socials actually are from me recording full videos of the podcasts. I haven't uploaded any of them yet, and this is me. I mean, I literally gave the advice earlier of just start doing the thing or else you're going to hold yourself back. I just haven't started it yet. But and part of the reason was I didn't have like all of the episodes of the RPG Goblin on like YouTube yet, and so I felt weird if I just started to upload some video versions randomly. I don't have that as an excuse anymore because now they're all up on YouTube. They don't have like full videos since most of them were just recorded with audio. But yes, I will be there are full videos of at least like the last, I want to say 4 or 5 episodes, or maybe more than that, and those will be actually getting uploaded to YouTube soon because I need to do that. Thank you for asking, because that just reminds me that I need to actually stay on top of it. But yes, those are coming out, and they're actually really fun too, because I like being able to see the person as I'm talking, and then I edit it and realize how insane I look when I talk about TTRPGs. Oh, and I'm actually recording a video version of this episode too right now. So videos all around. Hey, it's Future Editing Willow. Like we were talking about in the actual episode here, where I had video episodes of the RPG Goblin, those are all up on YouTube now. So if you really want to see the actual video of when we were recording these, I have it of designing one-shots, One Ring, Shadowrun, Dead Letter Society, Afterglow. I think there's one that I'm missing, but any other episodes that are coming to the RPG Goblin in the future will also have video. But if you really want to listen to those and you want to watch those and see the live reactions and what actually happens while we record, go check those out on the RPG Goblin YouTube channel. We also have videos of all of the past episodes that don't have video up on the YouTube channel as well, but those are just a static image. But if you prefer listening on YouTube over, Spotify or anything like that, then you can check those out on YouTube as well. So yeah. Fofi also asked, what inspires you to search for a new game? Quality of build, roleplay potential, sandbox quality. So I think this can I can have an answer for both personal games and also games for the show. I think I'm going to answer personal games first. I feel like I don't usually go and search for games most of the time. I stumble across most of the ones that I get into. But what really inspires me to actually research into it and look into it more is usually the concept. So my best example is Land of Eam. The concept and the stuff they used for the promo for the game was, Lord of the Rings meets the Muppets, and that just immediately sparked inspiration in my mind of that sounds like the most ridiculous game in the world and I need it. So the concept is usually one of the biggest selling points for me because I'm pretty flexible in trying different systems. I usually prefer things that aren't super, super crunchy, just because I love rules and I love mechanics, but sometimes I only have so much time to learn the rules and mechanics, but it's usually the concept. If the concept sounds really cool to me, I will usually look into the game or buy it. And or buy it, I guess I should say, because there have been many that I have gotten. I mean, one that Honey Heist is a great example. Bears committing crimes. When I actually learned what Honey Heist was, I immediately had to get it because that is just an insane idea, and I love it. There's another one that I backed on. I think it was Backer Kit. That's called Dead Air, and the concept for that game is actually like it's like an apocalyptic game where you're actually playing out more so the community side of things versus like, you know, you're fighting against like zombies or anything like that. It focuses on like more of those community stories, which that one really got to me because they reference things like The Last of Us, which is one of my favorite video games. I mean, I love both the games a lot. And also like the Walking Dead. And for me, early Walking Dead I really like, especially when it's focused on the community and like the community and how it's thriving and trying to survive in the early seasons. Like that really got me. So it's always going to be the concept for me. For the show, it's either a creator that I think is really cool and the game that they are playing I've never heard of and I want to know more about, or I know a lot about the game and I try to find a bunch of different people to try and get on for it because I just think it's really cool. But you know, for the show, like literally anything. I mean, that's kind of a silly answer for it, but like for the show, it's really anything that's not D&D. I want to showcase all kinds of different things, so I'm not really picky on what the game is. Um, Other than like I want who I'm talking to be like passionate about it and excited about it, because for me that's the real selling point is always getting to hear how other people really enjoy this game, and so then I can have an idea if it's a cool game for me. And that's why I think the show kind of works too, is that you get to hear, you know, this person really loves this game for this reasons, and if it matches up with what you really enjoy from games, it's like easy to be like, I think I would like that one. So yeah, I'm open to like any game on the show. I just think it's really fun. So that's not a great answer because it's literally anything, but I mean that's kind of how I feel. Ooh, okay. We got Riley from Friend and Foe Adventure Co. Hi, Riley. If you were to make your own TTRPG, what are some of the mechanics you use in it, and what theme would you set it in? This was a fun thing for me to think about when I was like prepping for doing this. Um, I I actually have thought about making a TTRPG. I think for me, I don't know if there's any specific mechanics other like I would want to try and play in Brindlewood Bay or Powered by the Apocalypse. I think are two systems that I would like to mess around with mechanics from and try and create a game from, just because those are ones that I really enjoy. Um, I mean, Powered by the Apocalypse was really the first big system, other than like, you know, a D20 system that I got into when I started playing TTRPGs or started to learn about TTRPGs. So I think Powered by the Apocalypse, with like the especially with the moves and like setting that up, I think would be really fun. Brindlewood Bay and how their mysteries work, I would really love to play around with, even if it was just writing a scenario for. But for what theme I would set a game in. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about an idea for a game I've had. I don't know if this is a game that would work. I don't know if this is a game that I could feasibly like figure out how to make. I don't know if it will ever happen, but I don't know if anyone here has ever heard of Mike Flanagan or watched any of his shows or movies. But he has a show called Midnight Club, where it's a bunch of terminally ill kids that actually live in like a hospice care. But the whole thing around it is that they tell these ghost stories at night. And a lot of these stories come from like their personal experiences and kind of telling their story through them, and even like what they fear and things like that. And I just think it would be really neat to have a TTRPG that is revolved around telling ghost stories. I don't know how it would work. I don't know any of the details, but I just really like the idea about, especially if it was like, you know, teens to like young adults telling these horror stories. I mean, Midnight Club works really well since like a lot of these things is like, a lot of the stuff is surrounding death and kind of dealing with that, especially since they know they're going to die. And so, I mean, I think the biggest challenge with that would be like trying to find exactly, what the stakes would be and things like that. But I love the idea of a game that is centered around telling ghost stories. I just think that would be really interesting to play around with. And whether or not it's like, playing it through another system where then you have like you play through ghost stories, or you create a system that is literally just about telling ghost stories. I don't know. That's an idea that I have. That's one that's been going around in my brain a lot recently. So, a little bit of insight there. I think I've only told like one or two other people about this, and I think one of them may have been like my younger sibling. So I don't know, maybe that's going to be something that happens in the future. I've never gone into game design, so who knows? But actually, building off of those questions from Kyle, uh, Kyle asked, would you want to work with someone and collab build something? I assume like a TTRPG. And I mean, the short answer is yes, I would. Um, I would really like to do that. I mean, one of my favorite things about being in this TTRPG space is working with other people and being able to create these really awesome projects that involve working with creators that I find are really cool, or that I just really want to work with in general. And then you also asked who would be fun to collab with on it. So specifically, I'm not going to focus on like the game that I pitched, because I really don't know like what I would need for it. I would have to do a lot more research on like who I would want to be a part of it. But um man, I mean, people that I would like to collab with when it comes to writing a game. I think recently I've talked to two designers that I really connected with. Rory Montfort, who created Dead Letter Society, is someone that I think I would really love to work with one day. Like if I had to pick some people to like collab on a game with, Rory Montfort, and also Steph from Fistful of Crits. Um, I a little bit, I guess, of some spoilers. I recently recorded an episode with her, and we ended up most of the time getting really deep into like game design and talking about like play styles and different elements like that. And so I think I would really like to collaborate with her on a game or something, because that would just be really cool. But I mean, like literally any creator that I follow, I would love to work with. Either if it's with like just coming on the podcast or like coming onto their show or something like that. I I'm just really open to it because I think it's really fun. Bunch of different experiences. I mean, actually for November, um I did some like interviews. I like went on to other people's like interview shows, and that was really fun to kind of be on the other side of it, since I'm so used to like hosting them. And so it's like, oh wait, I'm actually the one talking most of the time. This is strange. Well, even though I do talk a lot in the RPG Goblin, don't get me wrong, but I try. It's usually the focus is on the guest. I guess I wasn't used to the focus being on me, and so it's like, oh, this is interesting. But those were really fun, which I think the Billowing Hilltop interview, the like a short little one came out, and then I think the other ones that I was on haven't been out yet. But when those do come out, I will definitely let you guys know, because that was very fun. So next question from Parker from That One Nerds. What's been your favorite all-time character you've portrayed in a TTRPG? I'm going to give you one that's been from a long-term game, and I'm going to give you one that's been from a short-term game, because I've played a lot of like one-shots recently, and there's a specific character there that I want to shout out as being like one that I would really like to play more of. But my probably one of my favorite characters that I portrayed in a TTRPG was Athena. She was a Circle of Spores druid from one of my first ever like private D&D campaigns, and more by that I mean just like a game that wasn't public, with a bunch of players, um, or I shouldn't say a bunch of players, a bunch of strangers that I didn't know. But this was like an actual, like, one of my first like private games where it's like, we arranged this game and want to tell this certain story. But Athena, she was my Circle of Spores druid, and she was like a Fey wanderer. She was an Eldrian. Is that what they're called? I haven't played D&D in a while. I haven't even looked at like the names and stuff. Eldrian, like kind of the season elves from the Feywild. She specifically was a spring elf, and she was just really adorable. But she was a Fey wanderer and basically would just take notes, and she just wanted to see new things in the world. She was just a curious person, and she was so fun to play. Um, though the one thing I'll say is that that was pretty early on in my like TTRPG career, so I was still getting used to the concept of role playing. Because I'll tell you what, I was not good at role playing when I first started it, not good at all. And so there were some things with her that I wish I could do better. But I think for like a longer term character, Athena was definitely one that I really loved to play. She was just really fun to just, I don't know, be curious and want to check things out. I realized that I have another character that also was really fun, but I'm just gonna keep it to Athena because I just have really fond memories of her. And I would really like to bring her back for another game to like do her some more justice. But for a short term game, I would say Anthony March from the Paranormal Inc. episode with Game Master Monday. That was so much fun, and I think like my two moods for characters, it seems like, is either a sweet little thing or insane, because Anthony was so much fun to play because he refused to believe in ghosts even though he had a ghost on the team, and would basically try and find any way to explain it away as being a real thing. Oh yeah, Margot is just a goth, clearly. It's like, Anthony, no. And I still give so much praise to Pond, Jenny, and Grant from that episode, because Anthony was a difficult man to deal with. But yeah, that was so much fun. That it was a fun episode. I would love to do a longer game with Paranormal Inc. because that was a blast to do, and the ghost storage facility was a really good scenario as well. So I think like favorite character for a short term game, Anthony March, insane man, the skeptic, fantastic guy. All right. Let's move on. Second one from Parker from Nat One Nerds. If you could commit to a campaign for a system you haven't played yet, which one and why? Land of Eam. Land of Eam through and through. Why? Because it's Muppets mixed with Lord of the Rings. Do I have to say more? But if I do, it is because it is just a delightful mix of goofy and whimsical and just insanity, along with like being a solid game too, where you're going on these quests and adventures, and they have all these like random tables, and I just love the setting for it. I love all of the like character options. I love like the crafting in it. I love the magic items in it. I don't know if there's a thing in that game that I don't love. So if I had to commit to a campaign for a system I haven't played yet, like especially a long-term game, it would be Land of Eam immediately. For sure, without a doubt. I also would love to commit to a long-term Apocalypse Keys game, but for that, I just need a very specific group so that won't be the answer, because it just wouldn't work. It wouldn't work if it didn't have the correct buy-in. Like I love that game, but for me that's like so difficult because it's like I need a very specific group. I need to make sure that we're all ready to tell this really emotionally devastating story about like controlling these insane powers and also like what your heart wants and all of these things. So Land of Eam is the for sure answer, because I feel like there's too many others that are like too complicated. Land of Eam I just feel like would work in general, and I just think that system would also mesh really well with the kinds of games that I want to play. So yeah. So, next question, now that we actually got done with those ones, because I missed it, oops, is from Toffer from the Petticoat Tales. Asks, what's one skill you learned that instantly made you a better GM? Now, I feel like it's hard to narrow it down to like one like skill because there's like so many different things that I think has changed the way that I've GM'd. And I actually asked this question to my younger sibling to see what they would say because I was thinking through it a lot, and their answer was accepting that mistakes happen and being able to move on from them is a skill that made me a better GM. And I mean, I have a hard time arguing against that. Um, I think there's still times that I struggle with that now, but I think I agree that that's something that has really helped me become a better GM is accepting that mistakes happen, things won't go the way that you planned because they never will, going with the flow, and I mean just not taking it like I shouldn't say not taking it serious, but I mean it is partially that being able to adapt and not worry about making those mistakes has definitely really helped me become a better GM because it's hard making mistakes in these games because you want it to be this perfect experience and this perfect game, but that's almost never going to be the reality of any game. Even if you think it's a perfect game, like you could probably maybe your favorite game, the GM, there were parts that they were unhappy with, and I think that's just natural when you're creating when you're like being creative with something, especially like as the GM. I think specifically because you are putting a lot of work into these games, it can get so easy to feel like any mistake can be like the end of the world and that you're a bad GM for it. But I don't think that's true because it's just all part of the learning process. And so I think learning that mistakes aren't a bad thing is definitely a skill that has helped me, even not in just my GMing life, but also like my real life too. Um, Even though I'm still getting better, like I'm still learning that lesson, but that's one that has changed my GMing a bit to be for the better. But man, this is interesting. This is really fun because it's almost like being on an interview show, but like I don't have someone necessarily like directly asking me the questions in the moment. And so it's kind of fun to just get all those thoughts out because sometimes on the show I feel like I don't say enough things about like kind of my background and my thoughts in space because it is focused on the game sometimes. So this is a fun kind of way to go behind the scenes and like talk about some of these things. I love it. This is a great time. Also, I'm going to take another sip of water because I'm dying slightly. Another one from Toffer from the Petticoat Tales is, what have you learned about podcasting that you wish you knew when you first started? Um, this is an interesting one because for me, I'm pretty okay with the journey that I've gone on with podcasting. I pretty much knew nothing at the beginning. I didn't really know how to edit audio. I didn't know how to edit, period. Up until that point, the biggest thing that I edited were like pictures, and that's way different than editing for a podcast. I didn't know anything about distributing it. Um, the only thing I really knew is like the social media side, just because I had a business previously where that was, important. So I don't know if there's something that I wish I knew before I started because I'm pretty, I accept that most of the stuff that I've done isn't perfect. I know that, I still have plenty of things to learn with audio editing and how to market the podcast and finding guests and things like that, and even the structure of the show too. But I'm happy learning that along the way just because I like the experience of it. I like it. It's just been a really good challenge, so I don't know if there's something that I wish I would have known beforehand. Maybe that it's not as scary as it seems. Like if I was able to like go to the past and tell myself something about like podcasting that I wish I knew, is that it's not that scary. Like, it may seem really scary. You're putting yourself out on the internet. You're telling your opinions and feelings and stuff like that, and that's terrifying. But to actually like do it, it's not that scary, and that I've got it. So I think that would be the only thing, because I'm happy with learning in the rest of the journey, and maybe also doing backup audio. I'm realizing, because I just remembered that I did a really hard edit not that long ago, and I was suffering for it. So maybe backing up all audio, and also that it's not that hard. Or not that it's not that hard. It is hard. It's not that scary. It's going to be really hard, and there's a lot of things I'm going to have to learn about audio editing and marketing it and all of that, but it will be fine. Just back up the audio. Because I swear, there have been maybe like 2 episodes so far that have had an ideal audio conditions, and it tears me up every single time. And then on top of that, I had 2 episodes that actually got deleted. So there are 2 episodes of the RPG Goblin, and I made it very obvious just because I was having a really fun time with it, that are actually that were actually re-recorded, because I completely lost the audio files. It was back when I was actually just editing the podcast on my laptop, and my laptop wasn't great, and I needed to remove some files to free up some space, because I was editing a new episode and I needed to download it and stuff. And without even realizing it, I deleted like 2 episodes, and I spent like the entire day trying to get them back for it just to be moot. And oh man, that was really hard. And again, another reason to create a backup and also save it on more than one device, which is why now I make sure to save everything both on my hard drive and on my actual computer. It's so stressful to lose an episode like that. I'm glad that we were able to recover, because I was stressing out a lot, since that was like right before I was going to basically take a break for the entirety of July, because I had my partner visiting, and then I was going to visit my brother up in Ohio. And I was like trying to get I actually edited all of the episodes for July before I even went, because I'm like, I want to keep uploading during the entire month, but I don't want to have to worry about it while I have like traveling happening or people over. So I think I edited like 8 episodes that month, because I had to do all of this prep work beforehand. And one of the episodes that had to be in July ended up getting deleted. And so like I had to scramble so fast of trying to get it out and like get it recorded so that I could actually be set for July. Oh man. It's so fun to remember these things, and how scary it was as well to like lose the audio too and lose those files. Like, oh man. This is such a fun time to reflect. Also, Kyle, my favorite question is all of the questions, because I think these are all really good. They make me happy. Hey everyone, welcome to today's midpoint break. I just want to say very quick that this Q&A episode is to celebrate 1 year of running the RPG Goblin, aka the 1 year anniversary of this show. And honestly, I can't really believe it. It's crazy that it's been a year already, and it doesn't quite feel that way, as it's just been a real blast to do. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for letting the RPG Goblin be around for a year, run for a year, and that people listening are still here. So yeah, thank you so much, because you were the reason why I was able to do this Q&A episode. And thank you to everyone in the RPG Goblin Discord for submitting questions for this Q&A, hanging out during the live recording, and all of that. It was such a blast, and I know at the beginning of this episode I sounded a bit nervous, and I'll be honest, I was. years, since I haven't done a live event in a long time. And so kind of getting started was a bit nerve-wracking, but as we got into it, it was so much fun. So thank you so much. And if you want to be a part of any future live events or anything like that, please make sure to join the RPG Goblin Discord. The link of that will be in the description of this episode, along with being in my link tree. Another thing is the RPG Goblin has a Patreon now. So the Patreon is for everyone who wants to either get early episodes of the RPG Goblin, get to hear behind the scenes conversations from before or after recordings with guests, which there are a lot of them and they're always really, really good. You get to have exclusive access to the Discord server for any kind of special event that we will do that will be only for patrons. This may be things like one-shots in the future, exclusive Patreon events where maybe we, I don't know, have like a book club, things like that. Also, for our highest tier, you will get your name shouted out at the end of the episode and all of that fun stuff. But the main thing is that everyone, even at the lowest patron tier, gets to be a part of our monthly TTRPG party. Now, I hosted this first ever party in December, and basically we have giveaways, guests, and we talk about games and have an absolute blast. The recording of it is actually up on YouTube if you want to check it out. And I don't know if I'll actually host one during the month of January, as we only have one patron so far. So if you want to be part of a really fun monthly event, so please go over and check out the RPG Goblin Patreon and support if you can, so that we can have these monthly parties, so that you can be able to win stuff and talk about TTRPGs with people who want to talk about them. But yeah, these are my kind of announcements, I guess, for this midpoint. I hope that you're enjoying this episode, and if you are, please make sure to follow the RPG Goblin wherever you listen to your podcasts, follow the RPG Goblin on social media, and leave a review if you enjoy it, because those always warm my heart. So yeah, time to get back to the episode and even more questions. No question. I just want to say I live for your energy in your podcast. There's something magical hearing two people so happy talking about games. Thank you. Okay. So I love that you just said that, because I've been thinking about this a lot, because I am definitely a very high energy person. I am a very excitable person, I guess is the word for it. Um, and I was like thinking about this recently because I was checking out another podcast. It's also kind of like a TTRPG discussion podcast, and it's really good. But like the person hosting it is like a lot more like chill, and I'm like, oh man, it's kind of weird to like hear that in contrast to how kind of insane my show I think can get sometimes, because there is definitely a lot of goofing off and getting off the rails and energy that can happen on my show, and I'm just like really glad that people actually enjoy that, because that's just who I am, and that's just like what I like doing. Because if I had to be like really chill and like kind of professional with this, I think I wouldn't do it, because that would be so hard to force myself to do. And so I'm glad that you that you enjoy it, and that you enjoy people talking about games, because that's like, again, like this show is like a TTRPG exploration podcast, sort of. Like, I'm trying to find a way, if there's like a better way of defining it, because it is that, but it's also like it is TTRPG chats. Like I hate to even call it like discussions, because like it feels almost too like too formal. Like I don't know, but it's definitely one of my favorite things about my show. Is it's the tangents are the best. Exactly. They're some of my favorite parts, and it's so hard sometimes when I'm talking about a game and we get on a tangent, and then I realize it's been like 10 minutes, and I'm like, oh, maybe we should get back on track. Like it would be interesting to shift the show to just like tangent central TTRPG tangents. Um That would be silly. But that would also be fun, because those are some of my favorite moments too. Because it is fun to just go on these rants and to get the thoughts out. Like, I think it's really important, especially being in a creative space, to get all of these ideas out. And I mean, it's the same reason of why I wanted to start the podcast originally. Was I had all of these tangents, I had ideas and rants and all of this that I wanted to get out, but no one to really, like, nowhere to really, like, put it other than, forcing my family to listen to me talk. I just think there's a place for tangents. For, like, just content that's just tangents, and I almost feel like that's kind of what this show is slowly becoming, because I love these games and then I'm bringing on other people that love these games, and it's so hard to just talk about the one. It's amazing. But yeah, I agree, it's the tangents are the best. I'm glad you enjoy them because they are my favorite. I'm gonna move on to the next few questions here. We only have a few more left, I think. Coming from Marks Shepherd, who I had on for afterwards. Marks is awesome, very sweet person. What did you think? Oh, what do you think of solo games? Are there any solo games that particularly interest you? This is fun. So I have actually covered a few solo games on the show so far. I have actually played one. I want to play more, but I've only played one for so far. But I love solo games. I think they are a fantastic style of play, and they're one of my favorites, like, alternate style of play, where you can, like, play GM-less, where it's like, fully cooperative. You can play duet games or solo games, stuff like that. I think solo is, like, my favorite style, specifically, just because I love the fact that you can play a full game. You can play a game just by yourself. And I know some of the biggest appeals of TTRPGs is being able to, like, play with a group, and I love doing that. But also, I don't always have time to play games with a full group, and it's not always possible to arrange games with a full group. So I love solo games to be able to, you know, feed that TTRPG urge that I have in a way where I don't have to rely on having a whole group of people to do it. And some of my favorites, I mean, I love all the ones that we've covered on the show so far. So it's been Castle Memories, Over the Mountain, and oh wait, have it only been two shows so far, or two solo games so far? Yeah, okay, those are the only two solo games. That's crazy. We definitely need to do more of those. But I love those two. I've only played Over the Mountain so far. I started playthrough actually not super long after we recorded that episode, and I've had a big blast with it. I haven't played a lot of it, but I've gone through, I think, the first full day, and then I am like halfway through the second day. So again, it's not a lot, but I've had a blast going through it so far, and like rolling for the prompts and seeing what kind of story is slowly starting to unfold, which it's kind of crazy so far because there's like someone who knows like like at least a secret of my character or some information about my character, and so there's like some tension going on there. And my character ended up like breaking into this like into this like abandoned house that was like really garish and like brightly colored and stuff, and decided to live there, only to find out that like the person that used to live there recently passed away, and now haunts it. And their like granddaughter came in and like scared them and like threatened to basically call the police, because my characters was like, I bought the house, and they're like, I know this wasn't sold. And it's like, oh no. So there's some really silly stuff going on in that game. But I love solo games. I think they're fantastic. They're a great way, again, creative exercises, even telling the story. It's really good. And some other ones that I really love. There's a game called Seven Murders Till Sorry, let me re-say that because sometimes my brain doesn't say the words correctly. Seven Murders Till Midnight. It is a solo game about playing as a detective going after a serial killer. And it's kind of, spooky, slightly like horror and stuff. And I am just obsessed with the whole idea. I've flipped through the book. I haven't read it because I don't want to accidentally spoil myself on some of these prompts, but I love the concept, and that's one I've been really wanting to play. So that one particularly interests me. There's also, I mean, I still really want to try out Castle of Memories. Rune. Oh, Rune's a solo one. Okay, we've covered 3 solo games on the show. Rune from Gila RPG is another one I've really wanted to play. That one's more of kind of like gamified, where you're getting into these combats, and it's like Dark Souls, and you're like finding out lore and stuff. That one's really cute. I mean, it's not cute. It's kind of like dark fantasy, but it's really cool. I like the way that it plays out. Um and then, I mean, like, I could look at like my Google Drive folder right now and probably list off a few more solo games that I would really like to try. Which, okay, I want to know. I know that I've talked to a few other people who are like, yeah, I have just a monster TTRPG library in my Google Drive. Does anyone else have that too? Like, it's at least been like TTRPG content type creators I know for sure have these types of things, and I am no exception. And right now, like, my folder is very disorganized, as I actually have gotten quite a few like PDF games, and I've just dropped them straight in the folder and haven't organized them. And so, like, I have all of these categories, and then I have like probably over 100 PDFs just sitting uncategorized, and it's like, oh no, I have to actually go through and do that soon. That's so fair. I swear my hobby is actually collecting TTRPG PDFs. Same. Industrial Punk, same. It's that and actual physical books. It's just PDFs tend to be slightly cheaper to get in mass. Plus, like, itch bundles do not help at all. I love itch bundles, and they just feed my desire. Oh, another solo game that I'm really excited. Koriko, from Mousehole Press, I believe, or Jack Harrison. It's yeah, Mousehole Press. Yeah, Koriko. So that one's actually like being a young witch, and like you're leaving home and you're going on like a magical journey to like find yourself and stuff. It's really really cute. I've been really wanting to play that one. I think the actual like Kickstarter of it should be shipping soon. So that's exciting, except for the fact that my brother is getting all my TTRPG mail because we're still in the limbo of trying to sell our house, but it hasn't happened yet. And so I'm like, but we don't know when it's going to happen, so I just have everything going to him just to make sure it's safe. And right now he actually has my copy of the Zone RPG hostage, and he will be bringing it for Christmas because I'm so sad that like I can't have it immediately. Also, Industrial Punk, you asked, will the Dice Maker ever come out of retirement for the for the D1000? Maybe one day. That would be fun. I would like to. I might like look into like an idea for that, because that would be a really fun thing, especially for like everyone who's around for that time, like having basically a little memento to remember the November goal would be amazing. Cuz my god, you guys are awesome as hell, because I was hoping that we would hit it, and I just didn't think like I was hoping, and the numbers seemed on track, but like it still surprises me that we actually did it, and then we like even went beyond that. And so, like, I mean, this Q&A is actually like a special thing for making it over like a hundred over the goal. So like, thanks to you guys, we can actually do this Q&A. I mean, I think it was probably getting around time to do one soon, because it's we we need to talk about, I don't know, questions and stuff. Alternative, my hobby is just thinking about TTRPGs I don't play and run enough. Same. I wish I could play so many more, and it's actually there's actually a question that kind of covers this. But actually it's one from Industrial Punk, so actually we can get into that. Because I do have a goal that I would like to start running more games for myself, because I I do have the time for it. I don't have a ton of time for it, so it probably can't be like, several games a week, but I really want to start running more games because I love thinking about them, but I also need to get more experience too, because I'm only like 2 years into GMing. I've been technically playing for like 7, but I've kind of had gaps in between with like COVID and stuff like that. So like I love thinking about them. I just want to play more. So kind of segueing into this next question from Industrial Punk, as a game player, did you have any special goals for the new year? Get into a long campaign, do one shots, GM more, GM less, etc. Well, I already kind of answered it. I would love to run more games. Specifically, I would love to run more one shots and short campaigns. That is like my big goal, personally, because for me, because I love just thinking about the TTRPGs and getting into them, I like having the flexibility to not. I like not committing to a long campaign because that gives me flexibility to play more games. It gives me flexibility to experiment with more systems and stuff like that. So it's definitely going to be GMing more, um, playing one shot slash like shorter term games. Probably nothing over like 10 sessions, at least for a while. Like I'd like to run something longer again. Like currently right now my Monster of the Week game is a longer term campaign, but we're only like maybe 17 sessions in, and we're already close to a little over the halfway point. Um but yeah, it's definitely going to be running more things and running shorter games so that I can start experimenting more. Um And actually, Roleplay Rejects, would you consider a long campaign? Fantastic question. I think it is all up to personal preference because I don't think I've been able to find anyone who necessarily agrees with the same thing. For me, probably a long-term campaign is like 20 sessions or longer for me, since that's a longer time commitment. If you play weekly, of course, that's going to be 20 weeks, or if you play bi-weekly, that's going to be even longer. So for me, I consider like 20 sessions or longer to be a long-term game. And then like, I mean, a one shot's a one game, and then kind of I've had the term mini arc in my head too about kind of describing a length of game that is like from 2 to 5 sessions, and then like a short term campaign for me is like 5 to 10. I That's kind of like what I have time frame wise. Dang, I think like a years long weekly game is a long campaign personally. Yeah, I mean that is a long campaign. That's where it's just like different interpretations of what a long campaign means. For me, if it lasts a year, that's definitely a long-term campaign. Anything that lasts longer than that is clearly a long-term campaign. But like when it gets to like 20 sessions, I guess that's like almost half a year ish. Um, you're starting to get to a pretty long frame of time. I mean, that's kind of a mid campaign, I guess. I don't know. I haven't played like campaigns that last like over such a long time frame of like years and years. The closest would have been my first D&D campaign that I ran, which lasted for almost 2-ish years, maybe, I think. Um but I don't know if I have the patience to go for longer than that. um I shouldn't say I don't have the patience. I have way too much fun jumping around with different games that, again, being stuck to something that is like a year long is going to be hard for me, because then that means I play, I don't know, Monster of the Week for the year, which I'm fine with, but I also want to really try Glitter Hearts and Kids on Brooms and Root and Morkborg and Into the Odd and all of these. So I kind of like having shorter games so that I can try out a bunch of different stuff, because that's just where I really have fun, especially right now, since like I'm still so new to the like TTRPG things. I'm learning about new games every day. I want the opportunities to play them, and if I have a long-term game going, I can't fill that space with trying out different games since I already have it going. So like when we even started our Monster of the Week game, I told everyone, I'm like, I don't think we're going longer than a year on this, because I want to try a bunch of different things. Ironically, I don't think about how long a game is except for story arcs and such. Honestly, that's fair too. Like for me, like I'm still learning kind of like ways to set expectations for games. So for me early on, I thought about like, length of time, like how long is it happening over, months or a year or something. But I'm liking the approach to story arcs because that's kind of more so what I'm doing with my Monster of the Week game so far. We're like 3 arcs in, and I'm expecting this to maybe be about 6. So, and we're going to start our new one soon here, which is exciting. I can't wait for that. But yeah, no, arcs is a good way of thinking about it because then you can, you finish this arc, you move on to the next one. Oh. I feel that the main reason for us starting the podcast was to break away from the long term so we can actually try those different games. Exactly, which I think that is a fantastic reason to start a podcast. Especially like you guys have done so many cool games so far too, which is awesome. And that's kind of what I've been wanting to do, except I don't know if I like the group that I have right now has the time to run then to play in a whole separate other campaign. Also, hey Danny. But this time my brother Danny. Hello. Hey Dan, do you want to do you want to play in several long-term games at the same time? Several sessions a week? Yeah? Okay. I mean, Dan the Goof Man is my brother. Say hello everyone. He's a cool guy. But okay, I mean if you're down to run more, I mean I've been wanting to again run more one shots, especially in some shorter term stuff. So I am going to do that soon. So yeah, if you're always down, you can just join the ones that you can, and we'll see what happens. Yeah, we should get this going. We need to play more games. This is great. So you put him on the spot in the actual chat. He has to say yes to playing more. Yes, the answer is always more games. Family is the best party. Exactly. I love playing with my siblings a lot. You do always say yes, but sometimes you don't have the time, Danny. Sometimes you don't have the time. But yeah, but now you're saying yes, so we're good now. Yeah, no, family. I love playing with my family. I mean, the whole reason I got to even playing D&D was because Danny was playing in a public game of D&D at like a local game shop, and so we just went from there. And so he's kind of the gateway drug of why, or D&D's the gateway drug, but he's like the person who introduced me to it. um yeah, you were the dealer, exactly. But no, I love it. I can't wait to actually, okay, now that you gave me the confirmation, I already know I want to start running some more games. So now it's just got to happen because I am going to be running a one shot soon of actually a game called Somebody Dies in This Elevator, or Someone Dies in This Elevator. And then I already know that I want to run another shot soon of a game called Numbskulls, where you play as a bunch of skeletons who serve a necromancer in a world where necromancy is illegal, and you basically have to disguise as people, and shenanigans ensue. Which is like my exact type of game. And plus, the character sheet has a little skeleton on it that you can dress up. It's so cute. I love it. But yeah, all right, let's move on because I think we have 2 more questions here. So we'll finish those up, and then yeah, we can chat and stuff. Because again, this is really fun. Thank you everyone for coming in, and thank you everyone who has also come in and come out too. Because I know that it's late for some people, early here. Man, I got here late. Yes, you did, Danny. It started at 6. It's already been an hour and 40 minutes. We are getting business done. So from Void Shift C, what would your ideal set of dice be made of? Could include fictional materials. So especially as someone who's been a dice maker, I know I've seen a lot of dice and all of that fun stuff. I know a lot of people have like wishes for like bone dice and things like that, but I think I'm pretty basic in like my ideal set of dice. I just want blue, like goldstone. I think it's goldstone it's called. I just want a set of blue goldstone dice because it's like the dark midnight blue, and it's got the really pretty sparkles, and it looks like a night sky, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And those have always been a set of dice I've really 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 wanted, and I just haven't gotten. I would say another one that I've really wanted too, but I actually do have a set of these, is dice that have mushrooms in them, but I actually did get some that have these mushrooms and that are actually inspired by The Last of Us. And even the shot called like a brain hemorrhage, because it just reminded me kind of a little bit of that Last of Us style with how the fungus grows and stuff. And these are like really, really cool dice. I love them. They're from Poison Dice on Instagram, who I love her. She makes fantastic sets, and I have a few from her that are just gorgeous. But those mushroom ones were custom, and I'm just in love with them. And the last question, at least here in our chats, we are not the chat, but the pre-question chat, I guess, or the pre-live chat. I don't know, however you would call it, is from Kyle. Kyle asks, "You completely forgot, but your friends are coming over slash jumping into a Discord call in 30 minutes and are expecting you to run something. What are you running?" I love this so much because, like, that is such a stress dream to me. Is like, I was expected to run something and then I wasn't prepared to run it. Like that, even as someone who usually does mostly improv for my sessions, that still like stresses me out that I'm going to forget about a game or like forget that we were going to play something and I have to last minute prepare. I may have had this happen to me once or twice in my life as a GM. No. Well, I'm curious of what you ran. I would love to know what you ran, but my answer would probably be definitely Wizards, Honey Heist, or Numbskulls. Like those I mean, Numbskulls has been just on the brain for a little bit now, just because I've been thinking about running it as a one shot. But those three I think would be like my top contenders, just because they, I mean, Honey Heist is goofy bear criminals. Definitely Wizards is just pretending to be a wizard. And I've run Honey Heist and definitely Wizards before, and I absolutely loved doing it. It was so much fun and so insanely goofy, which again just kind of fits the style that I really like. And Numbskulls I haven't run, but I know I'm gonna like it, and they're all really simple and all have like stuff that you can on the fly create some scenarios for, which makes my life slightly easier, and I can improv from there anyway. So those are the three. I would do one of those three. Any of them would be a fantastic option because, I mean, they're just going to be really fun. Unless they're expecting me to run something like really serious, then I don't know why they expect me to run something serious short notice. But short notice is probably my fault in this scenario if I forgot about them. But if I had to run something like a bit more serious, I would maybe run the Zone RPG, especially if it was online. They have like an online version of it that's like super easy to just like get in and play for, and you don't have to do any prep. So I would kind of cheat and maybe run something collaborative too. I don't know. It's any of the shortcuts there. Something that's easy, one page, collaborative, like those are going to be fun and will not stress me out. Oh yeah, collaborative all the way. I mean, I was for this friend's birthday who's coming up, when I basically pitched like four different games. I'm like, we could play any of these four for your birthday. You tell me which one you want. Numbskulls was one of them. The Zone RPG was another one. Brindlewood Bay, and a game called Somebody Dies in This Elevator. Two of them were collaborative games because I want to play more collaborative games. And Somebody Dies in This Elevator, or Someone Dies in This Elevator, is one of them that is collaborative and won. So I'm very excited for that, which means I don't have to prep anything. And we get to all have shenanigans of trying to die in an elevator, and it's going to be awesome. So I'm really excited about that. Though I'm curious, Kyle, of what you've run, especially, I know that you've played a lot of Pathfinder and stuff too, and I would hope that they wouldn't expect you to run a last minute Pathfinder game, because that would be terrifying, at least for me. You love doing off the cuff Pathfinder? Not even sarcasm. I'm sure you do. I'm sure if you are comfortable with the game, I'm sure that it is very fun. As someone who's not comfortable with the game because I haven't played it yet, it sounds like a stress dream to me. I mean, like, playing anything off the cuff, I think is always going to be really fun. Just because, like, you don't get in your head about all the prep that you have to do and, like, all of the little details where it's just like, okay, we're just going to do this and see what happens. which I don't know if I've run proper like off the cuff game. Maybe our Honey Heist game that I did, because like I literally didn't get a lot of sleep that day. We like were out the entire day. I was exhausted, and all I had written down was a were that the bears were going to be stealing a prized honey ham from a bodega. It always seems straight from pre-gen adventures anyway, and I just riff off the other players' backstory. Honestly, that's so fair. Yeah, just like take from the backstories and just make something work. Because I think that's also really fun. Because again, you don't have like all of the overthinking brain that can happen in between, and so you can get something that's just that works and that is kind of more improv there, which I like. Why do you think I don't ever prep for Monster of the Week? Honestly, fair. Why don't you think that I don't prep for Monster of the Week, other than like the arc preps that I do like every so often when we start a new one? Like I think it's so fun to go to do more improv. Those are still semi prepped because I did, have to set up the story beforehand. But I would love to do like maybe a Monster of the Week one shot where it's like, okay, we're gonna play Monster of the Week, and then just figuring it out as we play. And Honey Heist was madness. I once had a whole adventure planned for the Fallout RPG, but one of the players had a backstory about wanting a Fallout style motorcycle. I just trashed the entire adventure and went for that concept. Okay, that's really good though. Like that's a Fallout style motorcycle, because that's fun too. Like just a goofy idea, like trash everything else, that's the winner. Which, have you done like long term like games like that where you've played for like over maybe a one shot? Because for me, I feel like those ideas really work for one shots, especially since it's like, we're just doing this for a session. But have you actually run ones that are longer than that? There were multiple times in my life, and honestly depends. When I was less of a focused dev, I did lots of random generic TTRPG system games and said, hey, let's pick a known world and fuck around in it. So commonly with the system was Cortex Prime. Oh yeah, that's fun. Actually, how is Cortex Prime? Because that's been one that I've been wanting to look into. And I think for a little bit when I was still learning about TTRPGs, I got that one and Cypher confused a lot, just because they all had to they both started with the C. Wesley and I have done a duet where I had nothing planned because I want to test my skills, not to brag, but I think I'm pretty good at it. Okay, you are good at it though, because you didn't like prep anything for the Cottages and Cerberuses game, and that was so much fun. I still talk about Wendy to this day. Our freaking satyr, our satyr frat boys, they're beautiful. It's a base system. It's pretty hackable, which is great for not planning. Perfect, exactly. I still have nightmares about the mycelium network. Yeah, I don't, because I successfully took over the world. I got what I wanted. That was so fun though, because I'm like, I just wanted something with mushrooms, and because I named mycelium, I'm like, okay, something with mycelium. I'm just gonna have a network where I can be able to tell where things are and see things through a reflection pool. And that was just really fun. I loved the mycelium network. It was great. Literally every single person like had such a cool idea for that game. Like I love what you did with the world and setting up the setting of it. I thought that was fantastic. I love what all the rejects did as well. Like everyone's characters were on point, and I still love that we all were like, we want to play mushroom guys. we didn't even talk to each other. We're like, all right, we're all mushrooms. And I mean, I still love the idea that like that Mycelia, Verna, and Puffball could all just turn the other two into mushrooms, and no one would ever know. We could be a whole mushroom gang. I would love to play that game. Same. I'm really excited for Cottages and Cerberuses to like fully release. I made sure to back it, because especially after playing with Damien, I'm just like that game's like, again, I knew it was going to be good, but like it blew me out of the water. Or it didn't blow me out of the water. It blew my mind of how good it was. I know what I'm trying to say. Turn a teleporting nerd rock into exactly. It would be great. Like we could do little costumes. Like I could imagine we could spray paint the rock to look like a puffball and give it little eyes and arms like Puffball, and that could be Puffball's child. Like that's as easy. Like it's that simple. And then we could all be mushrooms and take over the world through the mycelium network. So good. What a silly game. That was so fantastic. I can't wait to play it. Like I know that we're probably not going to pick that game up again specifically, but like I need to play at least the system again because I just love the character options in it. Willow, why are you always a war criminal? What are you talking about? Anthony March from Paranormal Inc. wasn't a war criminal. I think a buddy of mine got the rock added as a pet. Oh, that's so good. That's actually fantastic if the rock actually got added as a pet. No, I'm so excited for that. No, that's really good. Man, I can't wait for that game to actually release. Like there's so many games that like I've backed on Kickstarter that it's just like, oh, I can't wait for it to actually come out and like get into my hands so I can look through it. And especially with like Cottages and Services, like that one feels extra special too, since like I covered it on the show, then I played with you guys, and that's just been a whole process in itself. I love it. But no, I just have to say thank you guys for like coming to this was awesome. I definitely plan on doing one of these again, because even just to, I mean, I hopefully even the party will kind of be the same thing of where we can just kind of chat and talk about games and war crimes and all of that fun stuff, you know, normal things that nerds talk about. I think we'll probably end the actual Q&A here. So thank you everyone for listening to the episode, for those of who that are listening to it. Thank you everyone who came on and like actually hung out during the live bit of it. This was super fun and a blast to do, and I'm so excited to do another one of these. So yeah, this was awesome. Let me know what you think. And I always feel weird trying to end an episode, especially one where I'm just the one talking. So I guess bye.
Huge thank you to all of the Patreon supporters and Kyle Adderson for being our $20 patron who gets their name shouted out at the end. Thank you.